less is more. And yes, it's an overused phrase for minimalism. But in economics, they have another name for this. It's called the 80-20 principle. And it states that 80% of our output will come from 20% of our input. And this rule is also known as the Pareto principle because it's created by an economist, Vilfredo Pareto. It's just one day he came to a realization that 80% of its country's land is owned by 20% of its people. 80% of his peas came from 20% of his pea garden. That's when he concluded that 80% of the result, whether is it business, economics, or even his own garden, all of that derived from 20% of effort. If that's the case, this minimalistic mind of mine actually thought that if I can apply this principle into my lifestyle, I can actually remove those redundant 80% that gives me small value and put all my focus on that 20% that gives me the most value. And I realized that's the best equation for less is more, and straight away, the first thing that came into my mind was my wardrobe. Even after I declutter and downsize my wardrobe to today's amount, I still find myself wearing only 20% of my clothes in my wardrobe for 80% of the time. And maybe this is because there are still different materials that I prefer to wear. I might not be a good example here, but if you have too many clothes and you want to downsize your wardrobe, the 80-20 rule can be a good way for you to filter out what are those that you want to declutter. But for me, I don't think I'll be getting rid of any because I don't have any plans to buy new clothes, so they will stay. But I'll try to make the full use out of those pieces which I rarely touch. When it comes to tools and the things in my room, only 20% of the things are used 80% of the time. Those are my camera gears and daily essentials. I need to place them at a location where I have easy access, so to remove friction and make the whole process seamless. When I need a drink, bam, my water bottle is here. When I need to film, bam, my camera is under the table. When I need to practice guitar, bam, it's mounted on the wall. And when I need to head out, shit, where's my key? Damn it, they can never stay at one place. Oh wait, it's in my pocket. For the other 80% of the things I use 20% of the time, they are hidden neatly in the drawer or the cabinet. Because I have stuff that is really bulky, so they won't block my way when I'm doing my filming. Digital tools. If you have a phone with the highest storage, then probably the number of apps you download doesn't really matter to you. But the thing is, our time is limited. Perhaps only 20% of the apps is used 80% of the time, and the rest are just in case apps that are there because why not? And for me, I have a 64 gig phone, so that's not a lot, and I need to be mindful with what I download in it. I mean, it's limited, but it's sufficient enough if I remove those apps that I don't need. And if you don't have any space constraints like I do, you can always make space for clarity when it comes to using a phone, and the 80-20 rule can help you with that. Display the 20% frequently used apps, hide the 80% which you rarely use, and delete whatever that you don't use anymore. I have a video on decluttering a phone. I have it in the card. If you are interested, you can check it out. But for those examples I've mentioned, the 80% of our possessions that bring us only 20% value, they could be a distraction and clutter, which we can choose to hide it or declutter them. But of course, in other cases, it doesn't mean that the remaining 80% effort that brings us 20% result is not needed. They are there to complete the 100%, but we just need to rebalance our time and energy and prioritize what brings us the most value. That being said, that's the reason why this is perfect for work efficiency. We often waste time overthinking on the smallest details for our work without knowing if that effort makes a difference. For my case, I make videos on YouTube, and I will say I spend less than 20% of my work time on creating my thumbnail and naming the title. But then I realized probably 80% of you chose to click on my video only when the thumbnail and title are relatable. So that tells me that I need to spend more time and effort in creating a clickable thumbnail. If not, no matter how much effort I put in my storytelling, scripting, or video editing, all of those will go to waste if my thumbnail don't reach out to you guys, which is a sad truth I have to accept. And on the other hand, I'm spending way too much effort on stuff that gives me insignificant results. For example, perfecting my script. and finding the best typeface. No doubt they're important, but I take too much time and effort to a point where it reached a diminishing return. So when I make this video, it makes me realize that I need to rebalance my focus. Your work could be different from mine, but through analyzing and building awareness, we can restructure our time and effort based on the results we receive, so to increase our work efficiency. It might even save you some time to do what you always wanted to do, or spend it with the people you care. Other than work, it works best with business as well, and Tim Ferriss said it best in his book, 4-Hour Workweek. He realized 20% of his customers generates 80% of his sales. Knowing that fact, he actually fired some of his customers that is draining him emotionally and mentally, and they only bring him a small portion of his revenue. So firing those customers doesn't really affect him much financially, but yet he doesn't have to deal with those negativity anymore. So it was a good trade-off. In fact, this helps with our relationship as well. 80-20 principle forces us to reflect. Who are the 20% of people in our life that gives us 80% of our happiness? Because they will be the people that we should appreciate. That's utterly crucial for us because our time is limited, so is theirs. We wouldn't want to waste so much time, even if it's a second, to invest it in a relationship that don't bring us much value in our lives. And it's the perfect use of quality over quantity. It focuses on the quality time you have with the people you love, not how many followers you have in your Instagram. By the way, I'm not rejecting new friends, but I just want to put my focus on the ones that I really care the most. And this is a good realization because we don't even spend much time with the people that bring us the 80% joy. What about food? What are the 20% of food you eat 80% of the time? Once you know this pattern, it saves us a lot of time when it comes to doing our groceries. And I realize I'm such a boring person. I can eat the same thing for weeks and stock out the same thing when I'm out. I see it as a good point because that saves a lot of time. And most likely when you identify this pattern, you can also identify why are you so unhealthy. If you are eating unhealthily 80% of the time, you might want to swap it out to 20. Speaking of unhealthy food, let's talk about guilty pleasures. I think there's nothing wrong with drinking some alcohol, maybe daydreaming for a few minutes, or even watching ASMR videos. Hey, don't judge me, I need time to relax too. But we need to know the first 20% when we are enjoying our guilty pleasures. That could be good for our mind or body to relax. But the next 80% might be what we consider as a binge. And Mark Twain said it best, too much of anything is never good. Knowing when to stop at the first 20% can prevent us from falling into a rabbit hole of binging. Because having too much can be detrimental to us in the long run. And don't you feel, when we are eating fast food, we feel good about it at the start until we finish the meal. It makes us feel really shitty, whether is it because we are too full or it makes us feel guilty about it. And that led me to a conclusion that guilty pleasures is at its best when it's controlled. The scarcity makes us appreciate it even more. It could be for your countless hobbies, a house full of collection, the time spent on studying, or using it for your monthly budget. Of course, this list goes on and on because we can find 80-20 everywhere in our lives. We just need to identify it. But do take note that this principle is just a simplification or an explanation of how imbalanced our reality is. It doesn't always come in exactly at 80-20. The ratio could be 69:31 or 99:1. There's nothing mathematical about this principle. I think it's just a coincidence created by our humans' desire of having more. Let us do extra so we can have extra result. Let us buy more because just in case. Accuracy is not the focus here, but instead it's the awareness. What are we going to do after knowing this? How can we improve our productivity, increase our sales, declutter our possessions, or even save money? If those are the things that you want to achieve, then the 80-20 principle is something that you might want to look into it. So what are some of the 80-20 principles you can identify in your lifestyle? Let me know down in the comment section. And by the way, your likes and comment will help a lot with the growth of this channel. I really appreciate it if you can help me with that. And that's all I have for you guys. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys again next week.